So Kat, and this is a question that I get a lot also, and this is one for you. So, can we sell a house while it's going through the probate process, or do we have to wait?
Yeah, it depends, right? I hate that answer, but it's the truth, right? So, um, the simple answer is yes. You can sell it during the probate process so long as we have a representative who's been appointed by a court.
Okay.
Depending on if you have a will, I mean, if the will names an executor, most wills lay out certain powers that an executor has on behalf of the estate, and 99.9% of the time it includes the power to sell property. So as long as you've been appointed, you have what those letters of testamentary letters of administration, you have that authority to act on behalf of the estate. If you don't have a will, again, it becomes a little more complicated. But we can work on getting an administrator appointed, but then depending on if we can figure out who the heirs are, if we can all agree, we may be able to proceed without kind of court involvement. If the
Okay.
heirs are fighting, we can't agree, we are forced to use a dependent administrator, and then that administrator has to go to the court for permission to get things sold, including real estate. So potentially, yes, but if an administrator says, "Hey, I want to sell this piece of property," and an heir objects, we
Mm.
we may be kind of caught. Um, Especially if we can't find, or like if you can't find an heir. Sometimes we need the heirs to sign off on things. If we can't sign off on the sale of a house, then you may be a little bit stuck.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So, as long as so you have to have the letters of testamentary to be able to sell it, and is that is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah, some kind of letters from the court or some kind of authority, which is usually letters of administration if there's no will, or letters of testamentary, which is if you have a will. So they serve the same purpose, just the terminology is a little bit different if we have a will versus without a will.
Oh, okay, okay, great. So, what? So now that we're talking about that, so what can an independent executor administrator do versus, independent versus a dependent? So that kind of changes things.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, they are ultimately allowed to do the same thing. It's just with an independent, the independent executor does not have to go to the court and say, "Hey, judge, I would like to do X, Y, and Z." They just have the authority to do it because the will lays out that those
Mm.
powers, and it says if you're the executor, you can do all of these things without court involvement. A dependent administrator says, I'm still granted all of that right and that authority, but I can't just do it on my own. I have to go back to a judge. I have to have an application that my attorney has to draft and file. The court has to have a hearing on it, typically, granting this power. Once you get something like the power to sell, then you have to report back to the court if there's a contract in place. We have to get the court's approval to get the deal closed. So you can still do the same things. It's just a matter of efficiency and cost, honestly. As if it's a dependent, your attorney is having to file every time you want to do something, even like paying off a creditor, reimbursing someone for out of pocket expenses. Those are not things they can just do. They have to get that court permission.